Hi everyone, so welcome to week 11 of our course. We're on the home stretch. And we are now in the second part of psychoanalytic, psychodynamic psychology of religion. And this week we're starting our 2-week investigation of Carl Gustav Jung from your text, Freud and Jung on Religion. So my intention is to take the same approach that I did with Freud. That is, I know that most of you were not appropriately introduced to Freud, and hopefully now you have been, and that serves as the basis for your more in-depth, specific exposure to an introduction to his ideas of religion and neurosis. And now we're going to take her to another psychodynamic thinker, someone who reacted to Freud's theory. So he reacted to what Freud initially laid down. It was in fact his colleague. Carl Jung was called the Crown Prince of psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud. They became very close friends. They worked together, and then they had a very famous departure. Their friendship ended, and Carl Jung became famous in his own right, noted in his own right as the founder of what he called analytic psychology, which is markedly different from Freudian psychoanalytic psychology. So in order to discuss Jung's concepts on religion, you have to first understand Jung, and that is what we're going to do this week. So I've provided to you lectures on Jung, a basic introductory lecture that I've recorded to Jung, and like Freud, Jung is someone that I've spent many years studying and reading the original texts, and I underwent a Jungian analysis. Anyone who has ever had me in class knows I draw on that a lot for my teaching. I talk about my Jungian analysis quite a bit because it was a very profound experience in my life. And so I'm teaching you Jung from first-hand experience. This isn't, I didn't just read this stuff in a textbook and teach it to you. I lived it, and I think I do continue to live it. Jung was one of the early pioneers of art therapy, using art as a way of understanding oneself. Jung understood art as being a way into the unconscious. When you go to a museum or a gallery, or you watch a movie or a film, you're not only seeing something that someone else created, you're seeing yourself in that work. You're projecting yourself onto this work. And this, of course, is why you and your friend can go to a movie and leave having seen 2 different films. You experience it as perhaps your interpretation of the film, but what that means is you are doing the film. Whenever we give our opinion of something, we're giving a reflection of ourselves. We're speculating. Speculation, the Latin etymology is speculum, which is a mirror. So when you speculate, when you give your opinion on something, you're giving a reflection of who you are, more than what you think the thing is. This is real psychoanalytic stuff. So we start with a quote that I'd like to read to you, and this is from page 84 in your text. A letter from Jung to Freud. The outlook for me is very gloomy if you too get into the psychology of religion. You are a dangerous rival, if one has to speak of rivalry. Yet I think it has to be this way, for a natural development cannot be halted, nor should one try to halt it. Our personal differences will make our work different. You dig up the precious stones, but I have the degree of extension. As you know, I always have to proceed from the outside to the inside, and from the whole to the part. I would find it too upsetting to let large tracts of human knowledge lie there, neglected. And what I think Carl Jung is describing to Freud in this letter to him is his willingness to embrace the religions of the world, the traditional religions of the world, and to mine them for clues into the human condition rather than seeing them as a basis for neuroses, as Freud did. So it might help to understand if you go to become a Jungian analyst, and you can do so in New York City. There is a Jung Institute, C.G. Jung Institute in New York City. There are Jung Institutes in all major cities, Philadelphia, Boston. There are two very famous Jung Institutes in Zurich, Switzerland. So if you want to do graduate work, you can get master's degrees and doctorate in Jungian psychology. You'd be a Jungian therapist, Jungian psychotherapist. What I think it would be important to realize is when you go for these Jungian graduate programs to become a certified Jungian analyst, you spend 4 years studying Jungian theory. And you spend, of those 4 years, 2 of those studying Jungian theory, 1 year under Jungian analysis, and another year writing your dissertation. You also see patients. And there's a 5th year. And in the 5th year, you have to become an expert in one of the world traditions, mythologies or religions. So, for example, you can become a Jungian psychotherapist with a basis in Buddhism. That was my analyst's background. He was a Buddhist Jungian. So he based his understanding of the human condition on Buddhist principles. Some individuals follow African religions, African philosophy, mythology. Some use Greek mythology, as Jung did, for their basis. Others use Native American, like Lenape spiritual tradition. After studying Jung for about 6 years, I devoted a year of my life to studying Lenape spiritual traditions. The Lenape Indians, who were the folks who were here in New Jersey and Pennsylvania when the settlers came, the colonial settlers came from Europe. So they have a very interesting spiritual tradition, and it's well worth checking out. So we see Jung claimed, and he noted that through these world traditions, you have differences in names and figures, gods and goddesses, and how the system is structured, but it gets down to some basic principles that are unified, that are similar through all world religions. And that is what he was getting at. He was saying that we might have, as Freud said, an unconscious, but it doesn't end at our individual unconscious. It isn't limited to just our own individual unconscious. Beneath our own individual unconscious, which is fueled by things that have happened in our early life, beneath that is a collective unconscious. And that collective unconscious is the thing that unites all of us. Jung said it's like an island chain. So we see these islands coming up out of the ocean. And we see the island on the surface of the water, and that would be the ego. And then underneath each of those islands is the personal unconscious. It's the personal, the specific unconscious for each of those islands, the beneath the conscious level of water. And then they're all joined on a bottom layer of land. That's the collective unconscious. That's our evolutionary history that we all share. This is our common history. And he said that religion is expressed in different ways by different cultures, but it all comes from the same underlying human condition, the collective unconscious. Now, Jung gets this, as you know from my lectures that you'll listen to. Jung models his structure of the psyche on Hindu Vedic philosophy, Hindu religion. If you study the Vedic tradition, the Hindu tradition, you will read an exact account of the structure of the psyche with different names. Jung changes the names to unconscious, collective unconscious, personal unconscious. So this is just a basic understanding of this. So you're going to read this, his biography, the video that I've sent to you, Matter of Heart. It's available on the Rutgers Library. website, and it's also, if you have trouble logging into that, it's on YouTube. So just Google it, and you'll find it on YouTube for free. So just watch it. The quality's not as good as our library link, but it's good. So that's a great introduction to Jung. I'm going to send you another one next week that's going to really hammer Jung down for you well. I select these documentaries very carefully. So watch those, and you'll see that they correspond with chapter 6 and 7. When we get to 8, God as the archetype of the collective unconscious. This is where things will really sound metaphorical and mythological. First, you have to understand what is an archetype. An archetype is something that we all understand in a unique way, but we know what we're talking about. So, for example, if you watch a movie and there's a hero in that movie, we all know, all I have to say is he's the hero or she's the heroine. And you know what I'm talking about. You know what a heroine is. You know what a hero is. You know what, in some movies, the wise old man is. There's a wise old man. Morgan Freeman plays this guy in the movies. The man, the older person of wisdom, or the wise old woman. The villain is an archetype. I have to say no more than the wise old man, the villain, the hero, and you know what I'm talking about. They change, the people's names and the way they look and the way they dress, and what they do specifically changes from movie to movie, from novel to novel, from myth to myth. However, the central focus of the function of what they do remains the same. The hero does something heroic. The wise old person, the wise old man, the wise old woman knows the difference between thinking and knowing. Knowing is not wise. You know something when you're certain of it. That's not wisdom. Wisdom is realizing that there's very little that you can know. So you remain at a distance rather than getting invested in what you think you know, etc. So these are all archetypes, and what Jung presents to us in chapter 8 is God as the archetype of the collective unconscious. What is the collective unconscious? Well, that's that bottom layer of earth that all the island chains, all of us are connected to. And for Jung, that our idea of God, our concept of God, is the collective unconscious. When we talk about God, when we talk about a spiritual experience, we're talking about getting in touch with that thing that's common to all of us, our ancestral past. Not our egos, not our personal unconsciouses, but the underlying collective unconscious that unites us all. And that's what we understand metaphorically as God. So I'm going to let you get turned on to Jung and his archetypes and his basic structure that in the audio lectures I included, and read this text and watch the films and complete the assignment, and we will explore more deeply then, after you understand the basics of Jung. Next week we'll explore more deeply his ideas of the function of religion to produce an integrated whole individual. Unlike Freud, who thought that religion was neurosis, Jung felt that the absence of a religious continuity, a system to unify the sense of self, the absence of that would come neurosis. So when you see someone who is desperately seeking alcohol, what do we call alcohol? We call it spirits. It's a spirits. The individual is lacking something spiritual in themselves, and they're trying to get that something spiritual through drinking the spirits, through becoming drunk, through getting ecstasy for a few hours out of drugs or alcohol. For Jung, addiction is a spiritual crisis. Many people overcome their addictive problems through spirituality. Okay. Enjoy your introduction to Carl Jung.